Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the cold grey dawn of a Victorian poorhouse. You're already up, not because daylight broke, but because that iron bell just tore through the freezing air like a blade through cloth. No quilts to burrow under, no hot drink waiting. Just you, on a wooden plank, in a room with 50 women, all breathing dampness and desperation into the same stagnant air. You swing your legs over, your feet meeting cold stone. Could be November, could be December, makes no difference. The cold doesn't arrive at your door, it already lives here. And tonight, as we move together through this long-buried world of toil and quiet, you'll learn just how many ways a woman managed to survive in Victorian times. Taking jobs nobody else wanted, under conditions nobody else challenged. You won't believe this part. Some of these were actually considered lucky breaks. Alright, before you settle in too deep, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, but only if it feels right to you, and drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what hour it is in your world. Turn down those lights, switch on that fan for some ambient sound, and let's ease into tonight's little journey. You move into the hallway where oil lamps waver against walls stained with smoke. They've already read the morning assignments. You've been put on laundry duty again. How fortunate. It beats the oakum chamber, where fingers split open from pulling apart salt-crusted ropes used for ship maintenance. At least laundry comes with steam. Not heat exactly, just the kind that fills your lungs and sticks to your undergarments like a second layer of skin. The overseer, Mrs. Hawthorne, watches you like she's memorizing every mark on your face. She never raises her voice above a murmur, yet somehow she's more frightening than that morning bell. "Stay on pace," she says, even though your hands are already torn up from the day before. The poorhouse isn't a jail, they tell you. It's mercy. You landed here because your husband passed, or your father couldn't stay sober, or because you started with nothing and lived long enough for the world to notice you're not being disciplined. They insist you're being rescued, saved from the streets, they mean. You walk into the laundry hall, no conversation allowed, just the sound of water boiling in tubs and the smack of wooden beaters hitting fabric. You stir heavy sheets using your entire body, shoulders burning from the strain, steam winds around your head. By midday, you can't distinguish between sweat and accumulated moisture. One woman collapses next to you. Nobody pauses, you included. But here's what's truly odd. The world outside actually envies your position. At least you've got shelter. Food, if that's what you'd call it. Employment? Doesn't matter that the gruel is so watered down it resembles weak tea. Doesn't matter that the bedding crawls with bugs and whispered stories. You're protected. Isn't that the constant refrain? They can't see the dark bruises on your legs from kneeling too long on stone floors. They can't hear the nighttime coughing that sounds like someone's lungs are trying to escape their body. One girl, Sarah, barely past childhood, coughed crimson into her work apron just last week. She disappeared after that. Nobody mentioned where. Still, you keep your gaze straight ahead. You figure out fast that survival here means staying silent, unnoticed, but productive. Never work faster than the woman next to you. That makes you seem arrogant. Never fall behind, either. That reads as lazy. Just be present. Just push through. Come evening, you get 30 minutes for yourself. If the guard's in a generous mood, you spend that time rinsing your shift in the same basin the elderly women use for bathing. You squeeze it dry behind a chimney stack and hope it's not damp by sunrise. When darkness comes, you just lie there listening. Somebody snores, somebody weeps. You turn your face and watch the corridor lights stretch across the floor like a thin knife. You imagine what it would be like to work in an actual household, cleaning floors for a family that owns silver spoons instead of tin ones. You've heard about women who became housemaids or needle workers or even childminders, but those women are always other people. You, though, you just agitate linens and try not to suffocate in steam. You cough once into your thin blanket, just once, and convince yourself it means nothing. The following morning, it's not the bell that rouses you, it's the stillness that comes before it, a quiet so icy and complete it seems to fill your skull. You've memorized the patterns by now. You can feel when something's changed. Some girl never returned from the sick ward last night. Nobody speaks it aloud, but everyone understands. That's how things work in the poorhouse. People disappear like smudges wiped from slate. You sit upright, joints protesting. Your body hasn't forgiven yesterday's laundry shift. But today the assignment sheet shows something different. Sewing room. Now, this might sound preferable, less risky. You're imagining delicate lace and fine materials, perhaps even candlelight. A chance to rest your legs. Wrong assumption. The sewing room sits upstairs in the attic space where warmth never reaches and cold never departs. You receive a basket filled with rough canvas bags, coal sacks, old military gear, potato containers split along their seams. Your task is mending each piece manually, using a curved metal needle as thick as your thumb. No finger guards, no protection. You quickly learn not to let blood stain the material or you'll have to start the entire piece over. The veteran women call it needle bone. Not the labour itself, the damage. The relentless pressure of that needle against your thumb joint gradually reshapes the bone beneath the skin. By age 30, your fingers resemble twisted branches. Some women lose the entire fingernail. They claim it's nothing compared to dying in the streets. You push, drag, I-89. Time crawls forward. No timepiece exists in this room, but you can measure the hours by how the cold advances from your toes to your neck. A rat darts beneath a wooden beam. You don't yell, you don't even react. That's what divides the veterans from the newcomers. There's one woman working beside you, Mary Ellen. That's what they call her. She's definitely past 60 years old. Her skin looks like old paper. Her voice sounds like gravel scraping stone. She's repaired so many sacks she could manage it blindfolded. And occasionally does. She stays quiet unless she's offering guidance, which arrives like biblical truth. Reinforce the corners twice, or they'll rip in transit. Don't wet the thread with spit, weakens the fibre. Don't rush your pace or they'll keep you trapped forever. You match her tempo. That's your only strategy for making it here. Copy the ghosts who've outlasted your presence. Late afternoon brings a matron to examine the finished stacks. She jabs a finger into one of your seams, makes a sound in her throat, then exits. No approval, no criticism. That's the best outcome you can expect. Your hands pulse with pain. All through the night you dream you're stitching through your own flesh. The thread pulls tight. You can't make a sound. It's merely work. That's the official line. You avoid thinking about the girls who never escaped. Women who arrived during the Great Hunger and never glimpsed sky beyond those iron gates again. Some buried just past the boundary wall, their names scratched in chalk that weather washed away. But occasionally, on Sunday afternoons, you're permitted to walk the courtyard. That's when you witness it. Life outside these walls. A coach passing, an elegant hat, an infant wearing shoes. It pierces like envy. But you don't stare long. Staring makes the confinement feel heavier, so you look downward. You keep moving. You tell yourself that once you're healthier, quicker, sharper, you'll secure employment elsewhere. Perhaps as a servant, maybe even in a storefront. But tonight, you remain here, still under this roof built of regulations and starch and silence. You tuck your aching fingers beneath your thin cover and listen to the breathing of 50 other women rising and falling through the darkness. That bell will ring again, and when it does, you'll stand up. Because that's the only form of hope permitted here, the kind that keeps you labouring. The hour's still early, but you're already on the street. Today's assignment isn't within the poorhouse walls. It's inside someone else's chimney flue. You walk alongside a woman named Bess, older than you by a decade minimum, though it's difficult to say. Soot embeds itself in skin like premature aging, and nobody doing. This work stays youthful for long. She's got her brushes tied to her back with cord and a folded piece of canvas slung over one shoulder. You're carrying the lighter load, scrapers, metal rods, and a bag for collecting ash. It rattles softly as you move. The streets are grey with morning frost and coal haze. It's ideal weather for chimney work, cold enough that families are desperate to start their fires burning again. Most people wouldn't credit it, but that's when you're busiest, when the smoke has no escape route and kids are choking in the parlour. You slip into the service alley of a cramped house where Bess raps firmly on the servant's entrance. A kitchen maid answers, "Never meets your eyes." She gestures toward the back kitchen fireplace, still unlit. Mistress says, "Keep it quiet." "Tell your mistress Soot doesn't care," Bess mumbles. You're already pushing up your sleeves. The fireplace opening is narrow. This structure was built decades back when chimneys were designed wide enough for small children. You're obviously not a child, but you're slight and desperate. And desperate individuals find ways to squeeze through. You crawl forward on forearms and knees. The walls close in tight. Complete darkness swallows you after just a few feet. You can feel the soot crumble into your hair, your lips. You tie cloth over your nose, though it barely makes a difference. Using one hand, you scrape along the brickwork, dislodging chunks of tar buildup and abandoned bird nests. Bess remains below with the brush poles, feeding them upwards slowly to connect with you. You tap them with your boot, aligning each segment. Some days you're fortunate and it's only soot. Other times there are complications. Broken plaster, dead rodents, rusty metal. Once, a wasp nest. Though nobody discusses that job anymore. The dust feels alive in your chest. Victorian chimneys didn't ventilate properly, and years of smoke adhere to the walls like phantoms. You cough, and the sound echoes like thunder inside this cramped shaft. You think about the legislation they passed, how Parliament outlawed child chimney workers years ago. That's why Bess brought you on. Not because you're young, but because you can appear that way when necessary. It's a technicality. If questions arise, you're her trainee. If pressure increases, she acts like she doesn't understand English. You reach the bend in the passage and press your forehead against the brick. It's warm at this spot. Perhaps the fireplace was used more recently than you realised. You need to keep progressing before the next occupant lights a match without checking first. That's how the previous girl perished, wedged between bricks with nowhere to escape but upward in flames. You reverse direction slowly, careful not to twist wrong. Bad chimneys kill quietly. A stumble, a cracked rib, a wedged boot. That's all it requires. When you emerge, Bess offers you a water container and asks no questions. She simply brushes your hair back, gently clearing some soot from your forehead. "No work's worth dying over," she says. But you both recognise that's false. In this city, every job is precisely that. By late morning, your arms are marked with grey streaks. Your throat feels scraped raw. The maid doesn't even acknowledge you, just presses a coin into Bess's palm and closes the door. You want to break down, but the soot would turn your tears to black mud. You and Bess pause for a break behind a row of coal storage sheds near Bow Street. She shares half a roll that's gone hard with cold and several pieces of pickled turnip. It's not substantial, but it calms your stomach, which has been unsettled since you climbed out of the second chimney. You still feel those tight walls crushing your ribs. Bess lights the end of a cigarette and leans against the bricks. "You ever been up one with a fire pot still hot?" she asks offhandedly. You shake your head no. She smiles, smoke drifting from her split lips. Smells like burning leather and deception. There's quiet between you both. Not uncomfortable, just the type that follows mutual exhaustion. You remove your cap, shake your hair free, and run your fingers through it. What started brown now looks coal black. If you didn't clean it soon, it'd remain that shade for weeks. By early afternoon, you're on your fourth assignment. This one's a bakehouse. which means the chimney is wider but coated with layers of grease and flour residue. It's nastier than soot. Your palms slide against the surface as you climb upward. The brush snags something solid, a blockage the baker's apprentice swears is a dead pigeon, but Bess tells him to be quiet and watch the oven. The higher you ascend, the more your knees shake. The bricks here are uneven, and you can sense the heat from the bakehouse hearth beneath. Like a threat, you wedge your foot, reach forward, and your hand contacts something slick. You go still. Then you scrape again. It's tar, sticky and recently applied. You mutter a word that would have earned a slap from your mother and carefully begin your descent. Descending is always harder. Your weight fights against you, and if your foot slides, you'll plummet straight into the flames. Bess helps extract you, her arms more powerful than they appear. The baker is complaining about soot on his baking pans, waving a cloth like it's your fault the flue hadn't been serviced in years. You don't respond. You're too drained, and besides, nobody's paying attention. Back outside, you pause at a water pump to rinse your face. The water's freezing and smells slightly of metal, but you splash it on regardless. The soot doesn't wash off entirely, but the attempt feels worthwhile. You scrub behind your ears with your sleeve and glance upward. A man in formal headwear is staring at you. He grimaces and mutters something about girls nowadays, then moves along. You nearly laugh, as if you selected this path, as if this represents some kind of defiance, not simple survival. That evening, Bess accompanies you back to the shared room in a lodging house above a fish seller's shop. The walls are paper thin. You can hear an infant wailing in the adjacent room and heavy footsteps overhead. You set your tools beside your cot and lie down with a moan. Your arms ache, your spine is bruised, and your fingernails are edged with black. But you're breathing. That means something. You recall what Bess mentioned when you first accepted this job. People assume only boys did this work, but that's incorrect. It's simply that nobody mentions the girls. She wasn't resentful, just weary. You grasp that now. As you fade into sleep, your skin still tingling from brick dust and terror, you wonder what tomorrow's job will bring. Perhaps something less hazardous, perhaps not. But you'll appear. You always do, because in Victorian London, a woman with no alternatives doesn't get to be choosy. Your next assignment brings you to a different type of factory, a quieter operation, but equally unsettling. The odour reaches you first. Not acrid like chimney soot or rank like the boarding house stairwell, but musty, damp wool, old paper, and something additional, something faintly metallic, like iron left too long in moisture. You're inside a rag-sorting warehouse. From outside it resembles any other brick structure on the east side. No signage, just a heavy black door and a loading platform slick with yesterday's rain. Inside, there are no machines, just lengthy wooden tables and mountains, actual mountains of used rags stacked taller than your head. Most are stained. Some are rigid with substances you don't question about. Others remain damp, which is consistently an ominous sign. The supervisor, a thin woman with eyes sharper than seems reasonable, escorts you to your table. You sort by shade and material. Linen, wool, cotton. Remove pins and fasteners. No dawdling, and use gloves. She hands you a pair of cloth gloves so threadbare they might as well be transparent. You pull them on anyway. You start the pattern of the work. Left hand seizes a rag. Right hand flattens it out. Check for concealed needles. Look for buckles or embroidered details. You throw out anything too stained. Anything reeking gets double-bagged, and if you spot a handkerchief with silk-stitched initials, you slip it in your pocket when nobody's looking. Some of these scraps will become paper pulp. Others get turned into shoddy, cheap fabric for uniforms and prison clothes. The rest probably gets burned or sold by weight to men who don't bother asking questions. You're wrist-deep in wet muslin when your fingers catch something sharp. You freeze, then tug gently. A corset. Stays, sharp, rusted, busted. You You chuck it aside and massage your palm. The glove didn't protect you. It never does. The girl next to you, maybe 16, smirks without glancing up. Found a rat tail sewn into a bonnet last week, she says. Thought it was ribbon. You lift your eyebrows but stay quiet. There are unwritten rules in this place, and rule 1 is don't make a scene. By noon, your shoulders throb from the endless reaching and bending. The dust floating around isn't just fabric particles, it's dead skin, strands of hair, old perfume, coal grime, and time compressed. You taste it with every breath. This room used to be packed with younger girls, but too many got hurt, too many infections spread, so now the warehouse hires women like you. Quiet, dexterous, not likely to file complaints. You discover a bundle of children's clothes tied with twine, smocked dresses, wool leggings, a single tiny shoe. Someone treasured these once. Now they're just material to be categorized. You want to turn away, but you can't. Not because it's heartbreaking, though it is, but because it's eerie how quickly a life becomes fabric. You keep working. The stench only intensifies after lunch. The older the heap, the stronger the odour. Like damp coal dragged through a second-hand market. You've quit flinching at it. Your nose adapts quicker than your gut. By now, you're skilled at identifying fabric through touch alone. Linen feels dry and rigid. Cotton sticks. Wool nips at your fingertips. And anything smoother than usual, well, that's likely stained with something you'd rather not know about. You discover a large, tightly wrapped bundle tied with red ribbon. That's unusual. Most cloth arrives in chaotic piles, not packaged like a gift. You untie the ribbon carefully. Inside are mostly undergarments, petticoats, bloomers, camisoles, some edged with lace, and a subtle lavender scent, almost defiant beneath the decay. It strikes you then. These aren't work clothes. They're from an estate, a lady's wardrobe, emptied after death. Probably rushed by servants and sold by the pound. That lavender's making its final stand. You tuck a tiny piece of embroidery into your apron. Just a fragment. Worthless, really. But the stitching is delicate. You want to remember what luxury once felt like in your hands. Later that day, the forewoman summons you and another girl, Janet, to help out back. Hair table's overflowing, she snaps. You hesitate. Hair. The back room is smaller, dimmer. At the centre sits a low table covered with mounds of tangled human hair, strands of every colour, length and quality. It's what remains after the rag sorting, hair trapped in collars, stitched into bonnets, caught in combs. Yours isn't to question how it was collected. You sit down. You sort. Short strands, long strands, light, dark, silky, greasy, brittle. Anything usable goes into crates marked for wig makers. The rest gets swept and dumped on the floor. Janet leans in. Some of these wigs wind up on stage. Think they realise they're wearing chimney sweep locks. You nearly laugh. Nearly. Your fingers itch non-stop. You check for lice more frequently than you blink. There's a basin in the corner with vinegar water for washing your hands. It barely helps, but it gives you the illusion of doing something. Hours drag on. At shift's end, the forewoman hands you half a loaf as a bonus. It's stale and speckled with something you hope is poppy seed. You accept it anyway. You're too exhausted to argue. Walking home, your apron still holds the embroidery scrap. You flatten it in your palm. One tiny thing not meant for this existence. When you get to your room, you boil water and scrub your arms to the elbows. The filth doesn't wash out. Not really. It lives in the creases of your knuckles. Now, you lie in bed with your aching hands tucked under your ribs, and you think about how everything in this city is second-hand something, even you, even your dreams. You don't ask many questions when someone mentions factory work today that pays a halfpenny extra. A halfpenny more could mean soup with actual vegetables. So you follow the woman with hunched shoulders and quick steps past the markets, past the docks, into the maze of brick structures near the glue works. You smell it before you see it, a dense, sour reek that snags in your throat and settles behind your eyeballs. It's not the sharp bite of vinegar or the tang of spoiled milk. It's deeper, like rotted flesh and boiled leather, left to stew in their own wretchedness. You try not to retch. You don't want to appear weak in front of the others. The building is plain, just a warehouse with high, narrow windows and a roof that weeps tar when it rains. Inside, it's warm, unnaturally warm, even in November. Heat radiates from the vats lined along the rear wall, massive shallow basins, each filled with greyish sludge. A man in a leather apron stirs one with a long wooden paddle. Gelatin, the woman explains. For candy, for printer's glue, sometimes buttons. You glance at the bubbling vat and feel your stomach flip. You're assigned to a wooden table near the back, alongside 3 other girls and a boy no older than 12. Your task? Pick the maggots out of the raw meat scraps before they're dumped into the vats. You stare. Surely she's kidding. She's not. The meat is barely identifiable. Heaps of offcuts, cartilage, skin, hooves, bone shavings delivered in sacks, still slick from transit. The factory buys them cheap from slaughterhouses and butchers, but even they have standards, and today's batch is crawling. You're handed a pair of metal tweezers and a tin bucket. White ones go in here, big dark ones toss out. You start one piece at a time. You pinch, you flick. You learn not to crush them. The smell worsens the closer you lean. You breathe through your mouth, but that only lets the taste creep in. After a while, you stop registering it. Next to you, the boy hums tunelessly and works quickly, too quickly. He's not sorting properly. He just flips the chunks once and tosses them in the next bin. You whisper, "You'll get caught." He shrugs. If they don't spot it, they don't care. That seems to be the motto here. Keep moving, don't question, don't stare too long. You try not to wonder where the gelatin ends up. You hope it's not candy. You really, truly hope it's not candy. Someone throws a rag onto your table. Wipe your hands before break. You look down. You hadn't even noticed the pale grease climbing your fingers or the dark smears on your sleeves. Your fingernails are packed with grime. You wipe, but nothing really lifts. At break, you sit by the open door and suck on a peppermint you'd been hoarding for 3 days. It doesn't help much. You still feel the warmth of the meat room clinging to your clothes. A girl named Lottie mentions she once found a ring in a chunk of gristle. Real gold too, sold it for a coat. You eye your own pile, suddenly hopeful, but all you find is more squirming larvae. You return to the sorting table and try not to think about what's lodged under your fingernails. You try not to wonder how the gelatin winds up clear and pristine in its final form, boxed in paper packages with elegant labels. In here it starts in mounds of slick flesh, crawling and stinking. Somehow that becomes something refined. Lottie leans close. "They used to boil down cats," she whispers. "Don't anymore." Too loud. You stare at her. She doesn't blink. The boy beside you has started naming the larger maggots. This one's Wilfred. That one's Lady Grantham. You want to tell him to quit, but you also want to laugh. So you do, a bit softly. It's the first time today your ribs shift without hurting. When you finish a full bin, the man in the leather apron gives a nod and gestures to the back wall. Time to haul it to the vat. You lift the wooden crate with both hands, heavier than anticipated. The contents slosh. Something brushes your thumb. You don't want to look. The vats bubble steadily. Inside, everything blurs. Bone, sinew, skin, heat. The smell is worse here, more concentrated, like the ghost of meat. You dump the load in and spin away fast, stomach lurching. They say gelatin is good for the joints, that it builds strength. You doubt the people purchasing it know it started here. You doubt they'd care if they did. As the day wears on, your hands ache from the tweezers. Your eyes water from the stench. You grow quicker at sorting, better at not noticing. That's the essential skill here. Not speed, not strength, just the ability to numb your mind, the way you might smooth down a rough edge on a boot heel until it quits cutting. A bell rings near the entrance. Quitting time. You almost can't believe it. Outside, the air tastes like metal and deliverance. You pull your shawl tighter and walk back through the alley, stepping over puddles you pray aren't what they smell like. A carriage rumbles past, horses snorting. A woman inside wrinkles her nose at you. You see her hand dart quickly to close the curtain. You don't blame her. Back in your shared room, you strip off your clothes and soak them in cold water. The water turns grey, then brown, then something greenish that you stop examining. There's no soap. You scrub with vinegar and grit. It doesn't help much. You go to bed that night with the scent still clinging to your skin. You dream of vast, endless mountains of bones, of fish eyes blinking in the darkness, of vats bubbling with things that used to breathe. But the strangest part is you wake up in the morning and return because no one else will pay you for what you know how to do, and because there are worse jobs in London, though not many. As you tie your apron and slip your arms into your sleeves, you feel something hard in the hem. You reach inside. It's a button carved from bone, tiny and perfect. You slip it in your pocket, not because it's valuable, but because it's proof you were there. It begins before dawn, like most things do in your section of London. But this time, you're not heading to a factory or a laundry hall. You're following a wiry woman named Elsie down a side street slick with last night's rain and this morning's soot. She walks fast, clutching a burlap sack, her boots smacking against the cobblestones. You carry your own bag too, lighter than usual, but not cleaner. She turns down an alley near the tannery and lifts a creaking grate just wide enough to squeeze through. She climbs down first, vanishing into the dark, and then looks up with a grin. Well, you coming, or you prefer chimney work again? You lower yourself into the sewer without another word. Welcome to the underworld. By the flicker of a single lantern, you walk shoulder to shoulder through a tunnel no taller than a milk cart. The air is damp and dense with the kind of stink that sits on your tongue. But it's not just waste. No, there's something older in it. Decay, rust, and neglect. The scent of a city's secrets. Elsie's job is official. Sort of. She's what they call a rat catcher's assistant. The men get the license and the long coats, the women get the tight spaces and the blame. Today, that woman is you. Rats are more than just vermin here, they're competition. They gnaw through grain, destroy cloth, spread disease, but they also earn money. For every rat caught, the city pays a few pence, and even more from shopkeepers who'd rather not advertise their infestation. Elsie hands you a cage, wire, rusted but functional, and a small tin of bait. It smells worse than the sewer. Bit of cheese, rotten meat. They like it strong, she says, grinning. Just like Londoners. You place the trap near the tunnel wall, behind a brick outcrop slick with algae. It's your third today. You're learning quickly. Rats like corners. Rats like warmth. Rats never come when you expect them. But here's the thing they never mention. It's not always about catching. It's about finding. Elsie shows you how to read the signs. Tiny claw marks in mortar. Droppings the size of caraway seeds. Gnawed wood that flakes at the edges. These clues form a map, and if you're clever, you can track a nest before it relocates. That's when you get the good catch. A whole litter at once. You move slowly, careful not to splash or slip. The lantern swings behind you, casting twitching shadows along the curved walls. You flinch once. Was that a tail? A trick of light? You don't mention it. It's better to keep walking. You come to a grate, where steam rises from the street above. The air here is warm and shimmery. Sure enough, there are signs. Droppings, gnawed paper, a half-eaten crust. You and Elsie set 3 traps, and wait, and wait. Your knees ache. Your fingers are numb, but eventually you hear it, the rattle of metal. You rush to the first trap and peer inside. 2 rats, large ones, grey and greasy, eyes like pinpricks. You don't scream, you don't flinch, you nod. Elsie grins. You're ready for the gloves-off version now. The gloves-off version isn't a figure of speech. Elsie hands you a leather sack and a pair of tongs that once belonged to a fireplace. Sometimes traps don't catch them alive, she says. So we improvise. She opens a hatch in the wall, a side tunnel even tighter than the last, and disappears inside. You follow, crawling this time. The ceiling brushes your back, the floor slick with something that sloshes when your knee presses down. You hold your breath. You've learned to quit asking what things are. Further in, you hear the sound, scurrying close and fast. A whole nest, probably. The air is warmer here, thick with the smell of decay and nesting straw. Elsie stops and gestures silently. There, behind a row of broken bricks, is a burrow. You see movement, ears, tails, the glint of eyes reflecting your lantern. She strikes fast, faster than you expect, slamming a flatboard over the hole. Now, she hisses. You do what you were instructed. Grab the nearest rat by the tail with the tongs and drop it into the sack. It squeals and your arm jerks, but you don't drop it. You go again and again until the movement stops. The bag writhes in your hand. It feels like holding a sack of wet wires. You tie it tight. That'll fetch $1 at the rat pit, Elsie mutters. Gamblers pay well to see who'll kill the most in a minute. You glance down. You aren't catching them to protect homes. You're catching them for sport. You swallow hard. Back above ground, the city looks no different. A milk cart rattles by. A costermonger sings. But you've seen something most people will never see? A shadow city beneath the boots of gentlemen. Elsie sells the live rats at a pub on Field Lane, where boys place bets and dogs are trained to kill. You watch from the corner. The man takes your writhing sack without a word and tosses you a coin. It's heavier than usual. You don't smile. Later, you walk home, past a bakery. The smell of bread pulls at you, but your hands still reek of sewer and rat fur. You don't go in. Instead, you wash at a pump behind your boarding house, scrubbing your arms until they sting. You hear a woman in the next yard say her neighbour has rats. You glance toward the fence but don't offer help. Not tonight. You sit on your cot and tip the coin onto your pillow. You stare at it for a long time. It shines in the lamplight. Honest silver earned the dishonest way. You think about the rats you caught today, about how they looked up at you, panicked but not surprised. Maybe that's the worst part. They expected it. They knew the game. In a city that chews up everyone eventually, maybe the rats aren't the only ones in traps. You blow out your lamp and pull the blanket up. You wake coughing, throat coated with something dry and scratchy. Not sickness, just the dust. You'd think after days down in the sewers, nothing would surprise you anymore. But today, you're headed somewhere even worse, for your lungs, at least. The mill. Spindle Row, near Spitalfields, is home to a weaving mill older than most of the girls who work inside it. The windows are coated in grime, and the roof slopes like it's trying to escape the building. You walk in with a group of other women, all bundled in thin shawls and quiet as coal dust. None of you look each other in the eye. Inside, the noise hits you first. It's like being slapped by thunder. A wall of sound, clanking, clattering, humming, drowns out every thought. You could scream and not hear yourself. No one talks. They just nod and point and keep moving. You're handed a smock, grey with age, and led to your station. A spinning frame taller than you, made of iron and oiled wood. Your job is to watch the threads. Dozens of them spin at once, and if one snaps, you stop it, tie it, and start again fast. Miss one and the fabric's ruined. Do it too slow, and the supervisor marks your name on the board. They call this devil's dust. It's the fine, invisible fluff from raw cotton that floats through the air, coating your eyelashes, your tongue, your lungs. You feel it after 5 minutes, clinging to the back of your throat like fur. You swallow constantly. It doesn't help. A girl beside you, thin, pale, maybe 13, has already stuffed her nostrils with cotton scraps. It looks absurd, but she's breathing easier than you are. The spinning frame whines and jerks. One of your threads snaps. You freeze for a heartbeat, then reach in. Your fingers fumble. Another snap, 2 now. Your heartbeat doubles. You grab the ends, tie a rough knot, and pray it holds. Across the floor, the overseer walks with a chalkboard and a stick. He doesn't shout, just points. You keep your head down. After 2 hours, your shoulders feel like someone's hammered your spine. Your fingers sting. There's oil on your wrists and fluff in your mouth, but there's worse. The girl 2 rows over suddenly gasps and yanks her hand back. Her sleeve is caught in the rollers. She shrieks just once before another woman hits the emergency stop. The machine winds down with a terrible moan. Everyone keeps working. You do too. Later they say she only lost 2 fingers. A good day by mill standards. By the time the meal bell rings, your legs are trembling from standing still. Strange how something so motionless can feel like such a strain. You and the others shuffle to a long wooden bench where bowls of gruel are waiting. Lukewarm, pale and thick with mystery. No one asks what's in it. You're too hungry to care. The girl beside you sneezes, a wet, rattling sound. She wipes her nose with her sleeve, leaving a smear of fluff and blood. You both see it. Neither of you says anything. They call it by many names. Mill cough, cotton lung, Carter's asthma. But it's always the same. The dust gets inside you and stays. Some girls start coughing after a month, others make it a year, but in the end, everyone coughs. After the meal, you return to the frame, eyes blurry, breath shallow. The air seems thicker now, hotter. You watch the older women, see how they work with their bodies slightly turned, less dust that way. You mimic them, learn from their angles, small things that don't get written in manuals but passed from one worn spine to another. One woman, Dolly, is nearly 50, practically ancient in a place like this. She ties thread with a speed that feels like magic. You admire her silently. She catches your glance and winks. You make it past a month. You might just outlive the loom, she mouths. Her voice is a whisper under the machines, but somehow it lands louder than the clatter. She shows you a trick with beeswax, a swipe along the thread that keeps it from fraying. Old Dyer's trick, she says, and it smells better than death. You try it. She's right. By late afternoon, your fingertips are raw. You've tied more knots than you can count, and still the spools keep spinning. You're not sure what this cloth is destined to be. Military shirts? Underskirts for rich women? Fabric for upholstery, maybe? You'll never know. The cloth leaves the mill cleaner than the girls who make it. At the end of your shift, the foreman marks your name on a chalkboard under a line of smudges. No comments, no warnings. That's as good as praise. You walk home under a grey sky. The taste of cotton is still in your throat. You can't cough it out, it just clings. You pass a tailor's shop and see a bolt of fine cloth in the window. It might be yours. You'd like to think it is. That night you wake choking, just once. You sit up, sip water from a chipped tin cup and listen to the breathing in the beds around you. One of the girls wheezes in her sleep, rag pressed to her chest. You lie back and close your eyes. Tomorrow the machines will be waiting. You think you've done hard work before. Scrubbing laundry until your knuckles bled, crawling through chimneys until your lungs screamed. But nothing quite prepares you for the weight, the smell and the shame of today's job. They call it night soil, though the name's a kindness. You're on a cart at dawn, following a man named Reggie and his 2 mules through the narrow back lanes of Shoreditch. He's got a lantern swinging from the cart's edge and a long pole with a scoop at the end. The cart bed is lined with thick wooden barrels, all empty for now, not for long. The job is simple if you believe Reggie. Empty the chamber pots and privies of those who can pay. Haul it out of the city before the sun gets too high. Dump it in the fields. Come back and do it again. But simple doesn't mean easy. You're not allowed on the cart at first. Just walk behind, carrying the tin bucket and knockstick. Your job is to approach the back doors of houses before anyone else wakes. Tap 3 times. Wait. If no one answers, tap once more. Louder. If that doesn't work, you open the gate anyway. Time is money, and these pots aren't going to walk themselves. The first door creaks open and a scowling maid points without a word. You follow her through a narrow scullery, past stacked dishes and a mop bucket, into the shadows behind the stairwell. The chamber pot is there, wide, low, and disturbingly full. You grit your teeth, lift it carefully, and carry it back out, trying not to spill. You don't succeed. By the time you reach the cart, your shoes are soaked and your arms ache. Reggie tips the pot into the waiting barrel with a practiced swing and hands it back to you without looking. Only 47 more, he says. You laugh, then realise he's not joking. Each house brings a new challenge. Some pots are ceramic, smooth and easy to lift. Others are old tin, rusted and sharp-edged. One has a handle missing, one has 2 on opposite sides. You spill more than you'd like to admit. The smell doesn't leave you. It clings to your hair, your apron, your teeth. You start to understand why people cross the street when the cart rolls by. Mid-morning, you and Reggie stop behind a bakery. Not for food, just another pickup. But the warmth of the ovens leaks through the alley wall, and for a moment you pretend you're there to buy bread. You hear someone gag behind a shutter. You don't turn around. Reggie, for his part, whistles a jaunty tune as he works. You know the old rhyme, he says, smiling through stained teeth. Night soil in the morning bright keeps the farmer's crops just right. You don't respond. You just lift the next pot. You never realised how many homes there were in London until today. Big houses, small ones, narrow flats stacked like matchboxes. All of them with pots that need emptying, and almost none of them with the decency to look you in the eye as you do it. You reach a corner house with a gate that sticks. Reggie gives it a kick, then waves you in. The maid there hands you a porcelain pot without a word, arms extended like she's passing over something venomous. You take it with a nod, as politely as you can manage, and turn to go. "Wait," she says suddenly. "You dropped something." You glance back. She points to your shoe. It's not yours. You clench your jaw and keep walking. By midday, the cart is nearly full. The barrels slosh with every jolt. Reggie pulls a canvas sheet over the top and ties it down. "Don't want to attract flies," he mutters. Though that horse has long bolted, you can already see them circling thick as dust. Now comes the second part of the job, getting rid of it. You follow the cart east toward the city's edge, past the markets, past the warehouses, toward the fields beyond Whitechapel. This is where the waste goes, onto land where food is grown, where poor tenants pay to farm soil soaked in what others discard. It's legal, it's profitable, it's Victorian London. Reggie parks near a shallow trench and begins the tipping. The stench is unbearable, stronger than anything inside the city. You help unfasten the barrels, holding your breath as each one groans its contents into the earth. You step back, hands on your knees, trying not to vomit. You notice something strange. A row of children walking through the field barefoot, carrying sacks. They're gathering something. Worms, maybe, or bone fragments, or rags not fully rotted. One picks up a half-buried spoon. You look away. On the way back into town, Reggie tells stories. Used to be a lad drowned in a barrel once. Slipped in while unloading, lid shut behind him. Didn't find him till the next day. You go quiet. Reggie squints at you. You get used to it. Smell don't bother me none. You nod, though you doubt you ever will. Back at the workyard, you help rinse the barrels with cold water from the pump. Doesn't help much. Everything still stinks. Your clothes, your skin, your breath. You take a long gulp of water, but it only makes the taste worse. Reggie hands you a coin. 3p. Not bad for half a day's work. You stare at it. It feels heavier than usual. Walking home, no one meets your eye. People cross the street. A shopkeeper quietly turns her sign to closed. You pass a young couple, arm in arm. The woman wrinkles her nose and pulls him closer. You smile to yourself, not out of pride, but defiance. They pretend they don't see you, but they rely on you, on girls like you, on barrels like yours. And tomorrow morning, before the sun rises, they'll fill those pots again. It's a quieter street this time, in a part of London where the windows have curtains and the flower boxes don't smell like sewage. You've been sent alone today to a house with a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head, and steps, freshly scrubbed with lye. The woman who opens the door is dressed in widow's black and doesn't smile. Around the side, she says, voice clipped, "Mind the roses." You find the kitchen door and step inside. It's small but clean, with polished handles and a ticking clock above the mantel. No coal dust, no grease, no shouting. A maid appears and gestures toward the pantry. "They're in jars," she says. You blink. "The leeches?" She nods. There are 4 glass jars lined up on a shelf, each filled with murky water and the faint wriggle of something dark inside. You've never seen them kept so carefully. Usually they're bred in ditches or barrels behind apothecaries. But this house is different. These leeches are ladies. You've come to feed them. That's your job today. Keep the stock healthy for the doctor's visit tomorrow. If the leeches die, the doctor can't draw blood. If the doctor can't draw blood, the lady of the house won't get her weekly tonic, and her nerves, as she put it, do not tolerate delay. You take a deep breath. You've done worse. You've sorted maggots. You've carried privy pots through freezing rain. What's a few worms in water? The maid brings a small bundle from the icebox. "Calf liver," she says. "They prefer it to sausage." You untie the cloth. The meat is pale, soft and cold. You slice off a sliver and drop it into the first jar. Nothing happens. Then slowly the leech moves, lazily at first, then with purpose. It finds the flesh and latches on, wriggling in place as it feeds. The maid watches over your shoulder. "She's called Matilda," she says. "Been in the house 6 years. You glance back at the jar. "She's old for a leech." "Yes," the maid replies, "but she's reliable. The others are temperamental. You feed each one, jar by jar, liver slice by liver slice." The maid names them all. Clara, Prue, Miss Jenkins. You can't tell them apart, but she says she can. Prue bites fast. Jenkins floats sideways when she's sulking. You start to feel a strange fondness for them, odd little creatures living their lives in glass prisons, called upon only when someone feels faint or anxious, or in need of fashionable bleeding. There's something familiar about that. You reach for the last slice of liver when the maid stops you. "They're still sluggish," she says, frowning. "Might need real blood next time." You pause. She doesn't elaborate. You try to pretend. She didn't say, "might need real blood next time." It hangs in the air, heavier than the jars on the shelf. You glance at the maid, expecting a smirk or some sign she's joking, but she's already wiping the counter, quiet and brisk. You finish feeding the last leech, Miss Jenkins, apparently, who floats upside down for a moment before latching on, just as the maid said she would. Then you screw the lids on each jar, careful not to trap the creature's tails in the glass. The house is silent but for the ticking clock and the occasional clink of metal from the cutlery drawer. Somewhere upstairs someone coughs, a high wet sound that rattles the air like an old bell. You glance at the ceiling, then back to the leeches. "Lady Chamberlain," the maid mutters. Doesn't like doctors touching her, but she trusts the leeches. You nod, unsure what to say. The logic of the wealthy rarely invites explanation. The maid clears her throat. "We've got a glove if the blood needs drawing." You blink. A glove? She points to a shelf and retrieves it, a pale leather contraption with the fingertips removed. You wear it while they feed. Keeps your palms safe. Most of the bite is done through the wrist. You stare at the thing. It's been used. The leather's darkened around the edges, the shape moulded by many hands. Whose blood do you usually use? You ask quietly. The maid shrugs. Mine if I must. Yours if you prefer, the way she says it, like offering a cup of tea. You don't volunteer, not today, not unless you have to. Instead you wash the jars, tidy the scraps of liver, and check the water levels in each vessel. The leeches pulse softly now, fully fed, drifting in slow circles, like little ghosts in a bottle. It's strange how peaceful they seem once sated. No twitching, no hunger. The maid watches you work. You're calm with them. That's rare. I've handled worse, you murmur. And it's true. You've touched things more putrid, carried burdens more vile. A jar of living worms is nothing compared to the cartloads of shame you've shouldered. Before you leave, she presses a coin into your palm. It's warm, possibly from her apron pocket, possibly from something else. You don't ask. You step out into the afternoon sun. The street is lined with trees, rare this far into London, and their leaves glow like gold in the light. For a second the day feels lovely, until you lift your hand and see the faint red ring around your wrist where one of the jars had leaked. You wipe it away, but you don't forget. That night you dream of glass walls and tiny mouths that never stop sucking, of women who bleed for no reason at all, and maids who give just enough to keep them still. You wake before dawn, fingers tingling. The glove is still in your memory, waiting. You don't expect much from today's job, just a few hours in the back wing of the workhouse, sorting fabric scraps like before. But when the matron calls your name, she points not to the sewing room, but to a narrow corridor that smells faintly of bone dust and mothballs. Hair picking, she says. You blink. I thought that was done by machines. The matron snorts, not when they want it fine. You follow her through a low archway and into a cramped workshop filled with baskets. They line the walls in rows, dozens of them, each stuffed with what looks like a mix of string, hay and fur. But as you step closer, your stomach tightens. It's hair. Human hair, tangled, matted, in every shade imaginable. Long, short, curled, frizzed, some still with bits of ribbon, or worse, bits of scalp clinging to the roots. A woman at the centre table looks up. You're the new picker? She asks. Her voice sounds worn but kind enough. You nod your head. She motions toward a stool next to her. Grab a basket. Start with the tangles. Sort them by how long they are and what they feel like. Good strands to the left, filthy ones in vinegar. Lice get thrown in the fire. She waves toward a small brazier burning in the corner where something snaps and hisses. You try not to picture what's cooking in there. You sit down and get started. The hair feels rough and carries a faint smell of old perfume, body sweat, and something more sour. You work apart a clump of black curls, your fingers moving slow through knots hardened by time. Every so often a pin drops out, or a comb tooth, or a stiff hair ribbon. You get used to the whole thing, the woman says, her hands moving without pause. The smell I'm talking about. Some gets collected from hospitals, some from dead people. You stop for a second. She just shrugs. Nothing goes to waste anymore, not with wigs being so popular. You nod and keep going. You untangle a braid so fine it's like touching silk. Someone took care of it once, brushed through it, tied it with a pink ribbon still clinging to the tip. You unwind it slow and set the clean piece aside. That's a good one, the woman says. That'll bring in extra. A girl across the table sneezes hard, then says, sorry, under her breath. She's younger than you are, can't be more than 12. Her hands look red from the vinegar soak, so you hand her a scrap of dry cloth to pat them. She takes it without glancing up. The hours drag on. You sort, You sniff, you soak. The piles move slow from mess to order, short brown bits in one basket, long grey ones in another. There's something steady about it, almost calm, but it never sits right. You try not to wonder where the hair came from, or where it'll end up. By mid-afternoon, your fingertips feel raw. Not from scraping or lifting, but from pulling, splitting apart, picking out lice and twisting each piece into tidy little bundles. The vinegar soak is supposed to help, but it makes your hands reek and your skin start peeling. You flex your fingers and they crack. You notice the girl next to you. Her name's Nell, and she's slowed way down. Her eyes look glazed over, and she's been picking at the same clump of hair for nearly 15 minutes. You nudge her gently. You okay? She jumps a little, then nods. Just worn out. You look down. The clump she's working on is different. It's thicker, still damp, but not from water. You glance up at the older woman across from you. She notices but doesn't say anything. Instead, she leans close and whispers. Some of the hair comes from debtors' prisons. Whole families cut it off now to buy food. Men, too. Sometimes it gets shaved right off their heads while they're sleeping. You feel your stomach turn, but the work keeps going. You finish one basket and another takes its place. Each one has its own surprises. Once a pair of spectacles tumbled out. Another time a pressed flower, still blue, flattened between strands of auburn. These little pieces of life stick to the hair like forgotten stories. Someone laughs quietly from the far table. One of the girls made a fake moustache out of blonde curls and holds it under her nose. A moment of light. It shatters when the overseer walks in. Less talking. We've got an order that's due tomorrow. She walks to the back of the room and opens a cabinet. Inside sit rows of wooden heads. Wig stands. Each one wears a crown of hair made from the very strands you've been sorting. One has that pale braid from this morning. Another is jet black and pinned into spirals. These wigs will get powdered, styled and sold to the best homes, worn to theatres, dinners, court dates. Nobody will ever know they were once soaked in vinegar and picked clean by girls in a room with no windows. The irony doesn't escape you. You leave just after the sun sets, a kerchief tied around your head to cover the stench, but it clings, like it always does. No amount of washing gets rid of it completely. You smell like vinegar and old perfume, like dead things put to new use. As you pass a dress shop, you see a mannequin in the window. She's wearing one of the wigs. You can tell by the texture, too smooth, too flawless, too obviously second-hand. A woman walking by sighs and says to her friend, "I wonder what that cost." You smile a little. If only she knew. That night you lie in bed and run your fingers through your own hair, still yours for now. You wonder if you'll ever need to sell it. You wonder if someday a girl like you will untangle it in a vinegar bath, holding it up to the light and saying, "That's a good one." And you wonder if she'll guess who it belonged to. It's a different kind of work today. You're not being asked to carry things, scrub things, or crawl into anywhere damp. Instead, you're told to polish silver, straighten pillows, and fold napkins in a certain way. You've gotten a position, briefly, shakily, as a parlour-maid in a townhouse near Bloomsbury. The lady of the house has gone to Bath for 2 weeks, and the housekeeper needed someone quiet and fast to fill the space. You've promised both, but what they don't know is that you're not just here to fold linens, not this time. See, you've taken this job on someone else's behalf. A woman who gave you a bundle of coins and a name, told you to say you were her cousin, told you to pay attention, watch the guests, note who visits after dark, report back if you hear the name Aubrey. She never said why. You didn't ask. The house itself feels warm and quiet, a real house with ticking clocks and carpets that muffle your footsteps. You wear a crisp apron and keep your head down. You're invisible in the best way possible, and that's what makes it perfect for listening. Your spot is near the drawing room. There's a thin panel between the hall and the parlour, And when the door gets shut, voices travel beautifully through the plaster. You learn fast not to react, not even when someone says something shocking. You just keep folding, polishing, arranging. You overhear the butler practicing French under his breath. Terribly. You hear the cook cursing at the cat. You hear the housekeeper steal 2 bottles of claret and pin it on the footman. But one evening, as rain taps softly at the windows, you hear something that makes you freeze completely. A visitor. Male, young, smooth voice, the kind that wraps around words like ribbon. He calls himself Mr. Reed. He's not on the usual guest list. He stays too long, leaves too late. You press your ear closer to the panel, the woman hosting him. Lady Winterbourne, back early from Bath. Says his name twice, but it's not Reed. It's Aubrey. Your fingers tighten around the silver spoon you've been polishing. It's him. You don't know what he did, only that someone wants to find him. And you just did that. You stay perfectly still until the conversation ends. The door opens, footsteps pass. You duck behind the stairs, unnoticed. The next day you go to the place you were told, an alley behind the baker's, second bell afternoon. The woman is there, wrapped in a green shawl, the same one from before. He was there, you whisper. She doesn't smile, but she nods, presses another coin into your hand. You should feel guilty, but all you feel is awake. You return to the house with a quiet confidence tucked beneath your apron, the kind that doesn't show on your face but hums behind your eyes. The maid's uniform fits better today, not physically but in how you move. You know now that you're not just sweeping crumbs, you're sweeping up information, and someone's paying for it. Back in the drawing room, you catch Lady Winterbourne dictating a letter to a visiting gentleman. She assumes you're deaf or dumb. Most of them do. No, she says. Tell him the land isn't for sale yet. We'll wait until the others give up. Aubrey says he has a man inside the registrar's office now. Your heart jumps. You carry on with your polishing, quiet and invisible, though every muscle in your body leans toward that voice. A man inside the registrar's office. Land that isn't for sale. You think about the woman in the green shawl, the sharpness in her eyes. You wonder what she's chasing. Property, revenge, a scandal for the papers. You don't ask. You're not paid to understand, just to listen. At supper, the butler complains about the fish. Too dry, he says. The fishmonger is letting things slip. You file that away too. Every night now you keep a small notebook in your apron pocket. Nothing written down, just mental notes. Who visited, what they wore, who lingered too long in the hallway, which letters left the house, and with who. You become good at pretending not to exist. It's a performance. Eyes down, quick steps, quiet hands. You even hum under your breath, off-key. Enough that people assume you're simple. That's the trick. If you're thoughtless, you're invisible. If you're invisible, you can hear everything. One night, you're called to bring a tray to the upper study. Lady Winterbourne is gone, but he's there. Aubrey. You recognize the voice before you see his face. He's younger than you expected, clean-shaven, cufflinks like tiny moons. His smile is charming, but it doesn't reach his eyes. He doesn't even look at you when you place the tray on the table. You bow slightly, just like you've seen the others do. As you leave, you brush your sleeve against the edge of the writing desk. Just a touch, enough to shift the corner of a document. You glance at the signature. His real name is there. You mouth it silently on the way down the stairs. Thorn. The next morning, you walk the same route. Second bell, same alley. The woman in the green shawl waits. He's using the name Thorn now, you whisper. The letter was addressed to someone in Chiswick. She nods, presses another coin into your hand. Her fingers linger for a moment. You're good at this. You say nothing. Back in your room, you turn the coin over in your palm. You've cleaned chamber pots, scrubbed filth, touched things nobody else would touch. But this job, this one makes you feel like you're holding the brush that paints the picture, not the picture itself. You smile in the dark, just once. Tomorrow you'll listen harder. You arrive at the match factory before the sun comes up, the sky still bruised with that grey-pink London light. The building looms at the end of the street, brick walls, iron doors, and smoke curling out of the vents like something exhaling slowly after a long night. The sign out front says Bryant and May, though nobody calls it that. The girls inside have their own name for it, the Glow House. You step through the gate, and a warm, chalky scent hits you like burnt sugar and scorched paper, but with something underneath, something sharp, bitter. You breathe shallow and wipe your palms on your apron. Inside, the walls are coated in a fine white film. The floor squeaks underfoot. Long wooden tables stretch across the room, each covered in boxes, sticks and trays of sulphur powder. And at the far end, in a sealed-off chamber, behind a glass panel, sits a vat of something pale and glowing, white phosphorus. You've heard of it, of course. Everyone has. It's what gives the matches their spark, their hiss, their little burst of flame. But it's also what gives the girls that sickly look, that faint yellow pallor, that strange glow in the dark. They call it phossy-jaw. When it goes bad, you try not to think about it. The forewoman, thin, sharp, with a kerchief over her mouth, points you to a seat and a pile of sticks. Dip and lay, dip and lay. Keep pace with your line, or you're out by tea. You nod and begin. One by one, you pick up a matchstick, dip its tip into the sulphur bath, then lay it carefully onto the drying board. Dip, lay, dip, lay. Over and over. The rhythm feels strangely soothing until your wrist starts to ache. By midday, the fumes make your teeth feel loose. You press your tongue to your gums and taste metal. The girl beside you, red-haired with an eye that doesn't quite track, grins at you. "First day?" she asks. You nod. Give it a week, you'll glow too. You try to smile. The red-haired girl introduces herself as Frankie. Used to be in millinery, she says. Too much sneezing. Hats weren't worth it. You glance at her jaw. It's slightly swollen. She notices. Doesn't hurt much, just makes it hard to sleep or eat. You swallow hard and return to your dipping. By the end of the shift, your fingers are dusted white. Your sleeves, your skirt, even your lashes carry the ghost of phosphorus. When you walk outside, you can still smell it on your skin. Some of the girls walk home through dark alleys just to see the glow. They laugh as their hands shimmer faintly under their coats. Frankie winks at you. Better than gaslight, isn't it? You don't laugh, not yet. The next morning, your jaw aches. It's faint, just a tenderness when you yawn or chew. But it's there, humming, like a distant warning. You tell yourself it's nothing, probably just slept wrong. But as you walk back through the factory gates, the white dust rising from your clothes like ash, you catch sight of Frankie again. Her smile is crooked. "Today they gave me chalk pills," she mutters, tapping her pocket. "Say it keeps the rot out. Better than prayers, I suppose." You nod, unsure whether to ask more. Today you're assigned to the red room, a smaller chamber off the main floor, where the match heads are coated in the final mix: phosphorus, potassium, chlorate, glue, and a pinch of powdered glass. The fumes are stronger here, sharper. There's a reason the windows are always open, even in December. The foreman doesn't speak much, just points. You're to stir the paste, dip, then line up the sticks to dry. The trick, they say, is not to breathe too deeply. The paste is pale yellow, sticky, like syrup left on the stove too long. You try to work quickly, but the moment your wrist slips and two match heads touch, they spark. Just for a blink, a hiss, then nothing. The foreman barks without raising his voice. Just one word. Careful. You don't make that mistake again. During the break, you sit with Frankie near the back steps. She offers you a bite of her bread, but you shake your head. Your mouth tastes strange, like you've been chewing on a coin. You sip water from your tin cup, but it only makes the feeling stronger. You'll get used to it. she says softly. Or you won't. She tells you about a girl last month, Martha, who woke up one morning with half her jaw the colour of butter. By sundown, her teeth had started falling out. She never came back. You press your tongue to your gums again. Still there. Still sore. You return to work. That afternoon, the factory's air gets heavier. A storm's coming. The air pressure shifts and the girls start moving slower. The phosphorus doesn't like storms, gets twitchy. Sure enough, someone drops a tray near the back. The sticks scatter, a few catch. A brief flame flares and vanishes as fast as it came. Everyone freezes. Then, as if nothing happened, they return to work. That's how it goes here. Fires are part of the rhythm. Injuries too. The real danger isn't the flame. It's the slow ghost under your skin, the kind that eats away from the inside. You finish your shift with trembling fingers. Dip and lay, dip and lay. When you leave, the sun's gone and the street lamps flicker on, one by one. In a puddle near the curb you catch your reflection. The whites of your eyes look strange, almost yellow. You blink and it's gone. You walk home quickly, wrapping your shawl tighter. You wash your hands 3 times, but the smell clings beneath your fingernails, between your teeth, behind your ears. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, your jaw throbbing in the dark, and for the first time you wonder how many days you have left to glow. Your next job sounds easy enough. A seamstress assistant hired by the hour to help in the back room of a dressmaker's shop near Regent Street. No climbing chimneys, no carts of filth, no glowing dust. Just cloth, scissors and women's measurements. You almost laugh when you arrive and see velvet on the counters. But then you see the pile in the corner, corsets, dozens of them, some fresh and stiff from the factory, others returned by unhappy clients, too tight, too soft, too slow to crush the flesh into the fashionable shape. Your job, the dressmaker says with a polite smile, is to break them in. Corset breaking is the sort of work nobody advertises. It's hidden behind elegant windows and silk curtains. But the reality is, before a corset wraps around a wealthy woman's waist, it wraps around yours. The dressmaker shows you how it's done. You take one from the pile, heavy-boned with whale and steel, and you lace yourself into it as tightly as the client would wear it. Then you bend, you twist, you sit, you reach, you move like a mannequin made of wire. The goal is to stretch the fabric, soften the stays, and force the corset into the ideal shape without cracking the structure. It must obey her body, the dressmaker says, smoothing her hands down a bolt of Duchess satin. But it must first obey yours. The first one feels like armour. Your ribs creak under the pressure. You lace it, knot it, then begin the routine. Reach up, twist left, twist right, bend to the floor, pick up a pin, stand, sit, stand again. Repeat, again and again. After the 6th corset, you start to see stars. Your breath stays shallow, your spine aches. Your stomach gurgles from the lack of room. One of the assistants hands you a sugar lozenge with a knowing glance. "Don't faint on the velvet," she whispers. Madame hates stains. Each corset takes about an hour to break, more if the client is demanding. You hear their names whispered in the back room. Lady Carstairs, Miss Eliza Van Holm, names with jewels attached, names with opinions. You wonder what it must feel like to wear something so tight and call it luxury. By late afternoon, you've worn 13. Your waist has shrunk by 2 inches without meaning to. You walk like someone wrapped in iron. But the worst is yet to come. Some clients want shape memory, a corset that bends exactly where their own body curves. For those, you must sleep in it. You don't sleep well that night, not that anyone could, cinched into a borrowed corset so stiff it squeaks when you breathe. The dressmaker gave you a pallet in the back storeroom, between the bolts of brocade and an old tailor's dummy. "Don't roll onto your side," she warned. You'll bruise the boning. You lie flat, arms crossed, like you're in a coffin, each breath shallow and tight. The fabric digs into your ribs, pressing your stomach up toward your throat. You try not to cough. It hurts when you do. You dream of being laced into a cage that shrinks tighter every hour. In the morning, you can't sit up. You have to roll first, then push yourself upright, slowly. The moment you do, the blood rushes from your head, and you grip the shelf beside you until the room stops spinning. Madame appears moments later with a clipboard. Eliza Van Holm's corset. You nod faintly. Good. We'll fit it to her today. You've done well. She's a difficult shape. You almost laugh. The fitting takes place in the front salon, where light spills through lace curtains and everything smells like rose water and starch. Eliza Van Holm is barely 17 with ringlets and sharp eyes. She's sipping lemon water and examining her reflection in 3 mirrors at once. When she puts the corset on, she gasps slightly. Oh, it bends just where I need it to. You watch her turn and admire her shape. It moulds perfectly. Your bruised ribs made that curve. Your body took that pressure so hers wouldn't. You wonder if she knows, but of course she doesn't ask where her corset spent the night. None of them do. After she leaves, Madame hands you a new one, this one trimmed with black lace and satin piping. Lady Carstairs, she says, she likes hers very firm. You nod and take it to the back room. As you lace it on, your skin protests. Raw patches bloom under your arms. Your waist is already sore from yesterday, but the corset doesn't care. Neither does Madame. It must be worn, bent, tamed, and you are the tool to do it. You press your back against the shelf and begin the motions again. Bend, twist, reach, sit, stand, breathe, barely. By now the pain feels familiar, not sharp, but constant, like living inside a too small shell. The other girls tease. Sometimes you'll end up corseted in your coffin, one says with a grin. But there's truth in it. You've heard of girls whose organs shifted, whose ribs cracked. One who passed out at the opera and was revived with smelling salts and praise for her lovely silhouette. You're not doing this for praise. You're doing it for coins and bread and a roof that doesn't leak. At the end of the week, you're allowed to take the night off. You loosen your laces for the first time in 2 days. The air rushes in like water to a drained glass. You touch your waist, surprised to feel how much smaller it's become. And somewhere beneath the ache, you wonder how many women are walking around London wearing pieces of you. Low tide, that's when the river gives up its secrets. You're standing on the muddy banks of the dark Thames before the sun is up, your skirts already wet to the knees and your fingers stiff from the cold. All around you, the others are already at work, bent over, sifting, scraping, lifting. You join them wordlessly, sack in hand, eyes down. You're a mudlark now. Nobody hires you for this job. Nobody tracks your hours or hands you a schedule. The river decides what you earn. Coins, buttons, scraps of bone, glass beads, bent forks. Sometimes a rusted buckle. On good days, a copper thimble. On very good days, a halfpenny that's still legible. Most days are not very good. The river smells of oil, fish, and forgotten things. Your boots squelch with each step. Around you, girls your age and younger search in silence, scraping mud with chipped spoons or their bare nails. The trick is to move fast, but not too fast. The best things hide in the silt, just under the surface. If you scrape too hard, you stir it up and lose your chance. You squat near a collapsed timber, fingers working a clump of dark clay. You pull free a metal button, green with age, not worth much, but it goes into the bag. Next, a jagged bit of porcelain. No cracks, no pattern. Toss it. Then a bead, blue glass, round and still glossy. You hold it to the light. A whisper of a smile. You found something. You tuck it away. An older girl, Ada, trudges past you, sack slung over her shoulder like a soldier's kit. Check under the jetty, she mutters. A ship moored last week. Drunk lads drop things. You nod and make your way there. careful. The wood is slick, the water greedy. You don't want to fall in. The river's colder than death and not half as forgiving. Under the jetty the light dims. The air is damp and close. You dig carefully. Fingers brush stone and metal. You feel something small and hard, round, a coin. You wipe it clean against your skirt. It's a halfpenny. Queen Victoria's face, just visible beneath the grime. Your heart lifts a little. Then you hear shouting. Someone upstream found something. A pocket knife, maybe, or a bit of ivory. The others rush over like gulls. You don't. You've learned that commotion rarely leads to coin, just envy. You stay under the jetty, working slowly, methodically. The river always has more to give, and you've got the patience to wait. Your sack grows heavier as the morning drags on. It's mostly scrap, twisted pins, broken clay pipe stems, buttons without mates. But weight is weight, and weight can be sold. You tie the top loosely and rest for a moment on a stone block just above the waterline. The river laps quietly at your boots, like it's trying to pull you back in. You glance at the other girls. Some are up to their elbows in mud, sleeves rolled high, skirts bunched at the hips. Their faces are blank, eyes scanning, always scanning. There's no talking now, not when the sun is this high and the tide starts to shift. The Thames waits for nobody. A little girl, not more than 9, wanders too far toward the deep edge. You don't know her name. She's one of the newer ones, her bonnet still clean, her hands too pale for long in the mud. Too close, you murmur, but she doesn't hear. Ada shouts. The girl startles and slips just for a second, but it's enough to send her knees first into the water. She gasps, then scrambles back, soaked and shivering. The others don't stop to help. There's no time. The river's rising. You pull your own sack tight and begin to move back up shore. The mud sucks at your boots. You know better than to linger. The tide will sweep away the ground beneath your feet if you hesitate. At the edge of the embankment, an old man waits with a scale. He's not friendly, but he's fair, more or less. You dump your haul on the tray and watch him sort through it with his dirty thumb. 2 pence, he mutters. You don't argue. It's more than you made yesterday. You hold out your hand. The coins drop into your palm with a satisfying clink. Heavy, honest, earned. With your back bent and your hands raw. As you leave, you look once more at the river. It's smooth again, serene, like it never hid rusted nails or sharp glass or skeletons of forgotten ships. Back in the alley near your boarding house, you sit on a crate and count your findings again. You still have the bead, the tiny blue glass one. You turn it in your fingers. It catches the light like a drop of sky. You could sell it, it might fetch a farthing, but instead you tuck it into a small cloth pouch hidden in your bodice, a collection you've started of things too pretty, too strange, or too perfect to let go. You wash in a shallow basin. Your arms are streaked with silt. The skin between your fingers is beginning to crack. In bed that night, your legs still feel the tug of the river, your ears the soft slap of the tide. You dream of coins buried in the mud, of jewelled combs and tiny keys, of finding something that changes everything. But when you wake, you go back down again, because the Thames always has more secrets, and some girls like you know how to listen. You're posted outside a tobacco shop this morning, barely more than a stand-up stall built into the brick wall of a grimy side street near Clerkenwell. A smudge of a sign hangs overhead advertising pipes, matches and shag tobacco by the ounce. But you're not here to smoke, you're here to clean. The man who runs the place is called Mr. Higgs, and he has no time for nonsense. You'll take the used ones, he grunts, pointing to a greasy crate beside the door, and get them clean enough to fool a drunk. The crate is full of pipes. Clay, meerschaum, briarwood, all of them used. Some barely once, others blackened to the stem. It's your job to get them looking respectable enough to be resold or at least re-rented. Higgs runs a gentleman's pipe share, though the clientele is rarely anything close to gentlemanly. You sit on a short stool in the alley, elbows tucked in, and get to work. There's a bucket of lukewarm water, a dull knife, and a long bristle wire for scraping the stems. You take the first pipe, turn it over in your hands, and begin. Scrape, rinse, scrape again. Dry with a rag that smells like mildew and soot. It's messy, dull work, but the worst part is the smell. Old tobacco's bad enough, but these pipes carry the scent of 100 mouths. Sweet wines, bitter spirits, sour breath. Some are crusted with teeth marks. One still has a lip print on it. You try not to gag. A boy your age passes by and smirks. Cleaning pipes, huh? Bet that's not the only thing you're cleaning for a coin. You ignore him. That's the only way. If you talk back, you'll get followed, or worse. Another pipe. This one's cracked down the stem. You set it aside for the bin. Then another. Ivory-handled, delicate, probably stolen. You scrub it gently and feel a piece of enamel flake off beneath your thumb. You wonder who smoked this last. A drunk, a banker, a woman in disguise. You've heard stories. Inside the shop, Mr. Higgs shouts at someone about short change. Outside. You keep working. The bucket water darkens with each rinse. Your fingers turn grey, your nails soften from the soaking. You try to remember the last time your hands felt clean. By midday, your skirt smells of old ash and spit. The afternoon brings a different sort of customer. Fewer drunks, more quiet men with crooked hats and tobacco-stained beards. One gives you a nod as he drops off a pipe in the crate, the stem still warm. Another tosses his into the pile like rubbish. You don't speak, you just keep cleaning. Mr. Higgs leans out of the doorway to bark at you. Don't scratch the meerschaum ones. They fetch double. You glance down at the long curved pipe in your hand, carved with a lion's head, eyes dulled by years of smoke. You pick at the crusted bowl with the tip of your knife, careful not to gouge. Meerschaum's delicate. One false motion and it crumbles like powder. You sense footsteps approaching and freeze, but it's merely a woman wearing an apron, her arms loaded with washing. She observes your labour and whispers, "Better this than hunger." Then she continues onward. You're uncertain the stack ever diminishes. For every pipe you restore, another materialises. You start to remember them. This one with the damaged edge, that one with a copper ring near the stem. Some retain their owner's patterns in their aroma. Clove vapour, resin, cherry, whiskey. You sense like you understand them without meeting their faces. One pipe is marked black, within and without. You scratch it, polish it, immerse it, but it refuses to brighten. You present it to Mr. Higgs. He grunts. That one came from Johnny Rags. Smoked himself to ruin in 72. Discovered him rigid in the passage with it gripped in his fingers. You pause. Should I discard it? He raises his shoulders. Still functions, doesn't it? And that's the standard of value, isn't it? Whether something continues working, continues functioning, whether someone will purchase it once more. You polish harder as twilight descends. The atmosphere grows moist. Your pail is black. Your fingers are marked. Mr. Higgs compensates you a penny and half a piece of aged tobacco, worthless to you but exchangeable. You travel home through hazy streets, the flavour of cinders still attached to your mouth. You encounter a gentleman drawing on a pipe, his vision glassy, mouth pressed in satisfaction. You question, just for an instant, if it's one you restored back in your chamber. You cleanse your fingers with lye. They burn, flame at the joints. The odour never completely departs. You recline, shut your vision and imagine smoke spiralling from a lion's jaws, of heated stems and frozen alley cobblestones, of a metropolis that never wearies of consuming the same stale breath repeatedly. You wouldn't imagine a whistle could be employment, but in the thundering core of a textile factory, it's not merely a device, it's authority. And today, you become the whistle girl. The task is straightforward, theoretically. Sound the factory whistle to indicate the opening and closing of each rotation, signal it once more for intervals, and another time, in event of blaze or harm. But what they omit, what nobody ever states, is that every pulse in that structure bends to the noise of your breath. You appear early, before the initial dawn climbs over the soot-covered roof shingles. The supervisor hands you a brass whistle on a cord worn smooth by decades of palms before yours. Don't misplace it, he states. You misplace time. You misplace currency. The whistle girl position is a narrow platform in the middle of the primary chamber, elevated just sufficiently that every labourer can observe you if they risk glancing. From above there you can observe it completely. The columns of machinery like steel warriors, the hazer spindles, the girls twisted at unnatural angles, the men yelling over the racket. You're not present to assist. You're present to direct. The initial whistle of the morning must be piercing. Not excessively prolonged, not excessively brief, just adequate to cut through the thunder and announce the beginning. You raise it to your mouth, heart trembling and sound. The response is instant. The chamber transforms like a group of sparrows turning mid-air. Every palm shifts, threads rotate, belts grind. Girls jolt into activity like mechanical figures. You drop the whistle, heartbeat rushing. You hadn't anticipated the force of it, the burden of being. The instant when rest concludes and toil commences. Every countenance you observe following has its individual expression. Bitterness, exhaustion, hollow compliance. Some glance up at you like you're a tyrant, some like you're merely another piece in the same grinding apparatus. Both are accurate. Every 2 intervals you whistle once more for pauses, for midday meal, for partial day rotations. You are the tempo of their existence now, and you sense it in your belly every occasion you sound the whistle. Someone releases a bobbin, someone suppresses a profanity, someone swallows 1 additional minute of suffering. The supervisor passes through and grumbles, 5 seconds delayed on that previous one. You acknowledge, speak nothing. Because 5 seconds delayed means 5 seconds taken from the factory, from them. And those seconds accumulate like obligation. As the midday warmth intensifies, so does the tension inside the factory. Perspiration falls from foreheads and saturates into sleeves, but the machinery never slackens. The atmosphere is dense with cotton particles and vapour from the power chamber, and still you remain on your platform. Brass whistle heavy around your throat like a symbol you never requested to bear. You observe everything now, things you never perceived when you were below there yourself. The manner the girl at loom 7 falters every 4th tug, her left boot deteriorated to the base. The manner the boy on bobbin assignment wipes his nostrils on his sleeve every 10 minutes, then examines the crimson on the material. The manner the supervisor acts not to notice. They all anticipate you now, and the strangest thing is you begin to sense it before the timepiece. Your frame learns the tempo when the illumination changes in the panes, when the planks groan a particular manner, when the warmth intensifies into something metallic. You don't require a chronometer. You are the chronometer. You lift the whistle for the conclusion of day announcement. Breathful, you sound. But nothing occurs. A weak hiss. That's all. You attempt once more. Stronger. A sharp scream explodes out, excessively loud, excessively long. The labourers wince. The supervisor glowers. Too premature, he barks. Rotation's got 90 seconds remaining. You lower the whistle, face flushed, your palm trembles. Those 90 seconds extend eternally. You gaze at the timepiece on the partition, not believing your instinct anymore. When the pointer strikes the mark, you attempt once more. This occasion it's sharp, controlled, the proper noise. But you can sense the assessment in the atmosphere. They all perceive. After the chamber starts to vacant, a girl you don't recognise passes near you and whispers, "We anticipate your breath, simply to exist, and you can't even calculate. You speak nothing because what could you speak? The whistle girl has no companions, no supporters. You're excessively distant above to be with them, but far excessively inferior to be one of them. You exist in that peculiar space between labourer and guardian, between casualty and keeper. That evening you imagine of ticking timepieces, of your whistle oxidising closed, of the palms on the loom refusing to shift because you forgot how to announce existence. You wake before sunrise and sit upward, throat parched. You don't desire to be the whistle girl anymore, but you realise you'll return, because someone must sound the whistle, and today, like yesterday, it will be you. You don't anticipate much when you're instructed to appear to the anatomy chamber. It's not the typical location for girls like you. No spinning, no washing, no sewing. But you require the labour and you've learned not to pose questions. So you proceed. Apron creased, hair bound tight, heart steady. The structure towers like a courthouse, all stone and columns. But the panes are veiled and there's a weak acidic scent that encircles the entrance before you even contact it. Within, the realm is marble surfaces, oak stairways and murmurs. A man in spectacles acknowledges you with a gesture. You'll aid with the arrangements, he states. The pupils are expected at midday. You gesture, uncertain what that signifies. He passes you a thick canvas apron. You'll wear this over yours. It's impermeable. The chamber he guides you to is lengthy and frigid. Benches align the middle, enclosed by tall-backed stools and columns of glass containers on the ledges, some with bones, some with you. Don't gaze too extensively. At the distant end, a table, weights steel-surfaced, cleaned, spotless. That's your position now. You're not dissecting, not precisely, you're not a surgeon, not even a pupil. But the actual labour, as you rapidly learn, is in the arrangement. You retrieve the implements from the cabinet, blades, bone cutters, pincers, needles. You arrange them out precisely, in columns as neat as flatware. The physician demonstrates you once, then never once more. Contact nothing with your exposed palms, he reminds you, except the fabric. Your primary task is cleansing. Not palms, specimens, extremities mostly, sometimes just articulations, knees, elbows, shoulders. You unwrap them from linen like valuable freight, remove, rinse them in alcohol, blot them dry. Each one reveals a story, a scorch, a fracture that never mended, a hip excessively narrow for the frame that carried it. You're not permitted to communicate during the demonstration. Just remain near the lateral table, prepared to transfer implements. If a pupil collapses, and they do, you assist transport them out quietly, rapidly. One morning, the physician signals for a leg. It's narrow, a child's. You sense the burden of it as you raise it onto the tray. The pupils don't encounter your vision. You don't inquire where it originated. You never do. The demonstrations expand, more populated as winter approaches. Pupils in dense coats and restrained curiosity shuffle into the theatre, their breath clouding the glass as they bend forward over the barriers. The physician always commences the identical manner. Controlled voice, sharp movements, the kind that indicate nothing is misplaced, nothing peculiar about what's occurring. You've learned to shift around them without being perceived. You illuminate the lamps, you arrange the linens, you reveal the forms. Today's specimen is complete, not just an extremity, a complete body. Body. You sense it in the chamber before you even reveal it. The silence, the motionlessness, the manner the pupils whispers, quiet as you wheel in the table. You maintain your vision on the corners, the surface, anywhere but the countenance. The physician doesn't recoil. Observe the curvature of the backbone, he states. Inborn, possibly undernourishment, frequent in the inferior classes. You hear the scrape of pencils, the shuffling of boots. You've spent your complete existence attempting not to be perceived. And now you're positioned at the centre of a chamber full of boys with notebooks, vision flicking between you and the frigid form beside you. The irony isn't absent. Following, the physician commends your labour, rapid palms, good instincts. He proposes you additional intervals, additional compensation, and a fresh assignment. You're to maintain a record, a register of conditions. Every specimen receives a page: age, gender, reason of death, if recognized, visible harm, anatomical observations. He demonstrates you where to maintain the registers, piled tall in the cupboard, bound in brown leather, numbered in chalk. You trace your finger down a page: female, approximately 30, pelvis shattered, post-mortem deteriorated molars, likely washerwoman. There's something about it that seems incorrect. Not the death, the assurance. Like they can determine someone's complete existence from the shape of their bones. You attempt not to contemplate the morning when someone might record about you like that. One evening after the chamber has emptied, you remain to organise. You open a container on the ledge, one you've passed 100 occasions. Within is a human heart suspended in liquid, curling weakly like a fist on the label. Specimen 14C, enlarged, likely stress. You question whose stress, whose identity got reduced to likely. The following morning you appear early to polish the implements. One of the pupils is already present. He observes you for an instant, then states, "Amusing, isn't it? The deceased make the finest teachers. You encounter his vision, and the most impoverished pupils." He chuckles, not certain if it's a jest. But you weren't jesting, not even slightly. You're not certain what you anticipated when you answered the advertisement for animal care. Discreetness preferred, but it likely wasn't a parrot in a velvet vest biting your finger before breakfast. The task is with the Ashburys, a family excessively wealthy for sense and excessively eccentric for peace. Their townhouse near Kensington is magnificent but cluttered, every corner filled with curiosities, cabinets of butterflies, tiger rugs and glass domes filled with dried seahorses and animals. So numerous animals. Your position isn't as a servant. Strictly speaking, you're the keeper of the pets. At least that's what Lady Ashbury calls it. You rapidly learn what that signifies. Feeding, cleaning, pursuing, soothing, washing, and on one alarming occasion, stitching. You've got 2 parrots, 3 spaniels, a pair of tortoises, 1 moody cat, and something called Percival, which turns out to be a complete grown macaque that wears trousers. And that's just the upstairs collection. Downstairs, in a cellar perfumed with lavender and mildew, there's a glass cage the dimension of a wardrobe. Within it, coiled like vapour, is Balthazar, a Burmese python. Quite harmless, Lord Ashbury stated cheerfully, as if you'd inquired. Doesn't prefer loud women, though. Or Tuesdays. The serpent observes you as you labour, unblinking patient. You're instructed to clean his enclosure once a week, but not when he's digesting, the butler adds. Lifeless pan. We lost a girl that manner. Not to the serpent, mind you. She just ran rapid. You don't run. You require the currency. Instead, you learn how to wash serpent glass without attracting attention, how to sweep parrot feathers without getting screamed at, and how to retrieve a spaniel out of a washtub when it decides it's suddenly a fox. You also learn that aristocrats, for all their lace and titles, often treat their animals superior than their staff. One morning, the cat refuses to consume unless the dish is turned clockwise. You attempt it. She consumes. The maid observes and grumbles. Wish I could receive my supper that manner. Later, you overhear Lady Ashbury stating to a guest, "Our girl has a talent. Animals just obey her." You snort softly in the corridor. They don't obey you, they just recognise you're the only one who bothers to gaze them in the vision. That evening you fall asleep with scratches on your arms, feathers in your apron, and the weak smell of hay in your hair. It's peculiar labour, but you're beginning to appreciate it. It's raining the following morning, and the house seems restless. The spaniels bark at nothing. The parrots scream insults they clearly didn't invent. And Percival the macaque has disappeared. You discover him an interval later, swinging from the dining chamber chandelier, wearing Lord Ashbury's monocle and a string of pearls. It takes a slipper, a slice of cake and 2 hairpins to lure him down. You've never been so proud or so exhausted. The Ashburys don't acknowledge you, but they don't dismiss you either, which in this house amounts to praise. That twilight, Lady Ashbury announces she'll be hosting a salon. A gathering of minds and beasts, she states magnificently, gesturing to her fox fur muff and ignoring that it's currently gnawed open at the hem. You're expected to arrange the animals for display, so you wash the dogs, polish the tortoise shells, clean the parrot cages, comb the cat's tail. Even Balthazar the python receives fresh water and a rub-down of his glass partitions. But the actual trouble arrives with a guest of honour. A visiting baron has brought his individual pet, a lemur, jittery and wide-visioned, with the disposition of a powdered wig left in the rain. It screams the instant it observes the parrots. The parrots scream back. Balthazar stirs in his enclosure. Percival leaps into the curtains and commences tearing them down. You shift like a conductor through chaos, calming, redirecting, bribing with sugar and bits of chicken. You tuck the lemur under your shawl like a colicky infant and stroke its twitching head. Eventually, the chamber settles. The humans barely perceive. They sip wine, discuss politics, complain about the expense of fresh oranges. You're the one maintaining the peace. As the guests depart, Lord Ashbury chuckles and states, "What a performance. Give our little zookeeper an extra shilling. It's the most you've been compensated for anything in months." You sit in the conservatory, extended after everyone's departed. The rain still taps against the glass. Balthazar curls into a quiet spiral. The tortoises sleep in their box. One of the parrots mumbles your identity in its sleep. You sense oddly seen, not by the Ashburys naturally, but by the creatures, the ones who trust you, bite you, require you. It's a task nobody records about. No wages listed in the paper, no uniform, no schedule, no protection. But it's yours. And tonight, as you shut the entrance and examine the latches one additional occasion, you realise you'll return tomorrow for the serpent, for the spaniels, for Percival and his foolish monocle. Because someone has to maintain the wild things secure, even if nobody perceives you doing it. It's still dark when the laundry entrance creaks open and a blast of frigid atmosphere strikes your countenance. You've done linen labour, washing, starching, creasing, but this task is different. It's not about cleaning, it's about crushing. The mangle stands in the middle of the laundry chamber like a beast anticipating to be fed. 2 steel rollers, dense as tree trunks, mounted on a frame with a crank so massive it takes both palms to turn. You've heard tales, girls whose fingers got caught, wrists shattered, even scalps torn spotless from the bone when a loose strand of hair was dragged in. You hope those are just tales the housekeeper demonstrates you once. Feed the moist sheet between the rollers, turn the crank slowly. Let the apparatus press every final drop of water out, then hang, repeat, repeat, repeat. Straightforward, correct? You begin with something simple, a pillowcase. The rollers squeal as you turn the crank. You can sense the burden of it in your arms, the resistance in your shoulders when the material comes out. It's flat, frigid and rigid like paper, and you've only just commenced. By the 3rd load, your fingers are numb from the water. The soaked linens are heavier than you imagined, some so massive you require your complete frame to shove them into the apparatus. The rollers groan, your arms ache, your spine screams. The actual trouble commences with the tablecloths, refined ones embroidered at the edges, marked with wine and gravy from people who will never recognise your identity. You must feed them in carefully, crease after crease, like dealing with a serpent. You're not permitted to wake up. One slip and the fabric bunches. One bunch and the crank jams. The housekeeper warned you if it jams. You mustn't pull it backward. The tension goes one direction, backward. Cranking could snap the rollers or your fingers. You continue going, wringing, cranking, hanging the fabrics on dense ropes to dry. The atmosphere smells of vapour and steel and lime soap. You barely perceive the cuts on your thumbs anymore. By midday, you've developed a tempo. Grab, feed, crank. Grab, feed, crank. You commence to recognise the sensation of different materials: coarse hemp sheets from the servant quarters, silky napkins from the ladies' table, nightgowns with lace edges that always twist in the rollers no matter how carefully you align them. You whisper profanities under your breath. Quietly, rhythmically, it assists. As the midday wears on, the laundry chamber becomes a cloud of warmth and moisture. Your dress adheres to your spine. Your palms, wrinkled from the water, burn where the soap has deteriorated your skin raw. But there's no occasion to pause. The mangle groans if left idle. The housekeeper observes from her stool like a hawk with a damaged knee. She doesn't state much, just clicks her tongue. If your tempo falters, or if a towel emerges slightly creased, perfection is anticipated. Mistakes are remembered. Then arrives the velvet. You've never mangled velvet before. It seems incorrect. The fabric is soft, decadent, heavier than anything you've handled today. It smells weakly of perfume and particles. A gentleman's cloak, perhaps, or curtains from the parlour where someone sipped brandy beside a harp. "Don't crush it flat!" the housekeeper barks. "Drape it, press by palm." Gentle velvet's like temperamental company. Excessive pressure and it'll never appear correct once more. You follow her guidance, lay the material on the table, dampen it just adequate, press with a heated iron wrapped in flannel, blot, raise, crease. It's delicate labour, and it makes you sense for an instant like you're handling treasure. You commence to understand why some women stick with laundry. There's something oddly satisfying in it, in the arrangement, the transformation. Soaked, marked things turned spotless and sharp, chaos into control. But it's also brutal. You recall a tale whispered during midday meal, a girl in another house who collapsed from heat stroke near the stove. Nobody perceived until the maid went to retrieve water and discovered her curled like a dropped towel, palms still twitching from pattern. You blink, shake the vision from your head. Now it's sheets once more, then under things, then an apron with a mystery mark you'd rather not guess at. The final load is the housekeeper's individual blouse, petticoat, and a faded handkerchief with her initials stitched in exhausted thread. She doesn't acknowledge you, she just gestures once, then passes you a boiled potato and a slice of bread. "You'll do," she grumbles. Tall praise from her. You consume in silence, sitting on an overturned pail, observing vapour rise in ribbons from the mangle. Tomorrow you'll return, arms aching, skin raw, backbone bent slightly from the burden of moist linen. But something in you, stubborn or proud or just plain exhausted, realises you'll outlast that steel beast one turn of the crank at an occasion. The factory bell tolls just after sunrise and you're already in your apron, hair tucked under a scarf, boots laced tall. Today you're not headed for the looms or the bobbins. Today you're a ribbon girl, not the kind from storybooks who twirl silks and braid hair. No, you labour in one of the narrow stone ribbon factories aligned up along the canal, where the atmosphere hums with the clack-clack of jackered looms and the partitions throb with the metallic aroma of dye. Ribbons may seem delicate, but making them is anything but. Your task commences at the dye vats, which bubble like cauldrons. One incorrect splash and you'll wear azure for a week. The dye seeps into your cuticles, into your garments, even your teeth if you breathe excessively close. You stir the silk lengths with a lengthy pole, swishing them through hues, carmine, indigo, buttercup yellow, observing for evenness, catching the stubborn creases before they mark. And then with dripping arms, you haul the tangled mess to the wringer. This isn't like the gentle mangle from the laundry house. No, this apparatus is faster, tighter, always hungry. You feed it carefully, smoothing the ribbons so they don't crimp. The press hums with a warmth that singes your fingertips, and you swear it recognises when you're exhausted. It always snags. Then another girl stands beside you, her fingers missing the summit of a nail. "Got careless with the marigold batch," she states, grinning like it's a jest. She proposes you a peppermint. You take it silently, grateful. After ringing, it's occasion for trimming. Each ribbon must be inspected. No knots, no blotches, no frays. The factory sells to milliners and dressmakers in London, and the supervisor states that one damaged bolt could expense a dozen tasks. You labour with a pair of sharp shears, snipping ends in perfect triangles or scallops, depending on the order. Sometimes your palms shake, not from fear but from repetition. You glance around at the columns of girls hunched over benches, their heads bowed like in prayer, their scissors slicing in tempo. It's oddly beautiful. The midday illumination slants through grimy panes, turning the dyed ribbons into streaks of ruby and sapphire across the tables. Your fingers ache, but there's still the sorting left to do. Hundreds of ribbons, each wound around tiny cards, each card requiring a neat label. You sit with the others in a circle, knees brushing under the shared labour table. It's quieter now. The looms have slowed and someone hums a tune about a sailor and a lavender girl. You don't recognise the lyrics, but the melody is heated, like a thread tying you all together. Someone tells a tale about a woman in Coventry who once sewed a ribbon so refined it was worn by a duchess on her wedding morning. Another girl rotates her vision, more likely tied her corset with it, and nobody ever observed it once more. You smile. These are ribbon girls. Witty, rapid with their palms, sharp with their jests. Some are no older than you, others older than your mother. They communicate in slang you've never heard and pass you a plum to suck on while you crease and stack and sort. But make no mistake, this is a serious trade. Ribbon making is one of the few respectable factory tasks for women that doesn't involve soot, blaze, or deafening engines. It requires care, precision, and the ability to sit for intervals without snapping at the girl next to you. Still, it doesn't compensate much. Most of the wages vanish into rent, food, or assisting your brother finish his apprenticeship. Still, there's pride in what you do. Sometimes you observe your labour in town, a lady's bonnet tied with one of your azure sashes, a child skipping down the cobblestones with a velvet streamer pinned to her dress. You desire to state, "I made that," but you don't. Ribbon girls aren't meant to be observed, only their handiwork. As the bell rings for conclusion of rotation, you collect your implements, brush the threads from your skirt, and wrap your fingers in vinegar rags to ease the burn. Outside, the atmosphere smells of coal and cabbage, and your spine seems like it might never uncurl once more. But as you travel past a shop pane and observe a bolt of ribbon just like the one you creased an interval ago, you stand slightly taller. Tomorrow, it'll be carmine. The morning after, maybe rose gold. You're just a ribbon girl, but you thread slightly colour into the grey of the realm. One card at an occasion, you're up before the sparrows once more. But this morning is different. No bells, no chimneys, no factory lines. Today you're dressing for a task that doesn't mark your palms or leave your spine raw. It's quieter, stranger, and somehow more hazardous. You're a mannequin walker, not the rigid wooden kind in shop panes, but a living, breathing mannequin hired to display gowns for dressmakers and private clients. Your frame is your resume. Your posture is your paycheck. You've been instructed to travel not like a person, but like a silhouette. Effortless, elegant, like you don't have bones or blisters or concerns at all. The salon is on the second surface of a well-polished townhouse. Lace curtains, peacock feathers in vases, a bell that tinkles whenever someone opens the entrance. And in the rear, an entire chamber filled with gowns that expense more than your year's rent. Your initial assignment, stripped to your chemise. A seamstress with needles in her mouth assists you into the trial gown corset. Initially, naturally, tighter than your individual because these are cut to fantasy, not flesh. Then the bodice, rigid with boning. Then the skirt, layered and heavy, rustling with hidden flounces. You're no longer yourself. You're an idea of beauty. The madame hands you a mirror. Stand tall, chin forward. No smiling unless you jest. And for heaven's sake, don't sneeze into the lace. You glide into the drawing chamber where a client anticipates with her maid. She's older, sharp-visioned, wrapped in shawls and already frowning. You're instructed to travel slowly across the carpet, turn, travel once more. Stand motionless while she squints at the bodice seams. Raise your arms, lower them, step forward, backward. Hold your breath while she tugs at the waistline, clucks her tongue, grumbles about how it sits on the hips. You're furniture now, silk-covered furniture. She orders tea mid-appointment and you're left positioned in location, feet throbbing in boots a dimension excessively narrow. Your arms ache from being held precisely, like a porcelain figurine. The gown itches, the corset bites, but you dare not shift. Every twitch might wrinkle the material, miscellanea, pleat, upset the vision. The madame, your employer, returns and whispers. She's fussy, but her orders are massive. Don't communicate unless spoken to. So you don't. You become grace incarnate, a mute swan draped in duchess satin. The client finally gestures. Superior, that neckline might do, but will lower the shoulder slightly. It requires to flatter the collarbones. Her maid scribbles furiously. She doesn't inquire your identity. She doesn't care if you're hungry. You question if she perceives the perspiration glistening beneath your powdered collarbones or the tremble in your knees. Probably not. She's purchasing a dream, not a person, and you are the hanger that dream hangs on. After she departs, the gown is stripped away, the needles retrieved and the flounce carefully repleated. The dressmaker proposes a thin smile. She appreciated you. That signifies you'll wear her wedding ensemble following occasion. You state gratitude, even though your ribs hurt and your pride seems slightly wrinkled. Because this task, peculiar as it is, compensates superior than ribbon-making or starching collars. You'll never require to scrape coal particles from your scalp or wash someone else's sheets, but you'll still ache quietly, invisibly, under layers of chiffon. On your travel home, you pass a storefront and observe the reflection of a mannequin in the pane. Not you, but one of the plaster ones. Still, for a second, you can't determine the difference, and that's the peculiar magic of it. You've become the perfect illusion, a woman so polished, so posed, that even the mirror forgets she's genuine. The lamps have dimmed, the gas lights flicker inferior, and the ribbons, bonnets, corsets, starch and vapour slowly melt away into the shadows of the past. You've made it through 20 peculiar existences, 20 peculiar, beautiful tasks Victorian women once did, each one with its individual tempo, its individual ache, its individual quiet pride. You've stood in dye-marked boots and travelled like a duchess. You've twisted sugar, creased linens and hemmed hems for women whose identities you never recognised. You've become part of the wallpaper, part of the display, part of the machinery that made the Victorian realm run behind the curtains. And now your journey is complete. Let your shoulders drop slightly, let your breath soften. The noise of the metropolis streets, the hiss of vapour, the clatter of scissors and looms and needles. It all fades now. Only silence remains and the whisper of material brushing across polished surfaces. You've earned your rest. Shut your vision and imagine the rustle of a gown in a quiet drawing chamber, a ribbon fluttering in a breeze, the hush of slippers on marble. You're not a mannequin, you're not a maid, you're a dreamer who slipped into another era and arrived back secure. Sleep well, little time traveller.